Welcome to Delphos Insights. This is episode 24, where we examine how impact investing in emerging markets is being redefined by measurement discipline in 2026. In private markets, impact is no longer a narrative. It is a quantifiable performance metric.
And I think that shift from narrative to metric is really the foundation of our deep dive today. Because for the institutional listener, whether you are sitting in the CFO chair or you lead a private equity team or you sit on an investment committee, this is not a conversation about philanthropy.
Right. It is strictly about capital allocation.
Capital allocation, fiduciary duty, and core risk management. I mean, credibility in emerging markets today is earned entirely through measurement, not through messaging.
Which is a huge departure from where the industry used to be.
Right.
Because for a long time, the impacts label felt like, a marketing tool. It was something used to polish a fund's reputation.
Or to justify a lower return profile, exactly. But if you are deploying capital across borders today, particularly in emerging markets, that narrative approach simply does not hold water anymore.
No, it doesn't. Rigorous impact measurement has really become a governance discipline that is absolutely essential for cross-border deployment.
It has, and we are going to unpack exactly how that looks today. We will look at the evolution of impact assets under management, the role of AI and satellite data in verification, and we will walk through real-world case studies from the Democratic Republic of Congo, Greece, and Mongolia.
But I think we need to start with a macro shift, because the rationale for this entire asset class has fundamentally transformed.
Right. If you look back to the early 2020s, the conversation around ESG and impact was primarily defensive.
It was very much compliance-driven.
Yes, it was a box-checking exercise focused on risk mitigation. You screened out certain sectors like tobacco or weapons just to avoid reputational damage.
But as we look at the landscape in 2026, that paradigm has inverted completely. The focus is on materiality and value creation.
We are no longer asking, did we avoid harm? We are asking, did this capital generate a tangible economic or social return that actually drives the financial performance? Impact is now viewed as a driver of returns.
It is not a trade-off. And the market data absolutely reflects that confidence. Impact assets under management have grown at a 21% compound annual growth rate.
A 21% compound annual growth rate is a massive trajectory for any asset class. Institutional investors realize that emerging markets offer infrastructure development and demographic growth that you just cannot find in saturated developed markets.
And you cannot separate the financial success of, say, a new port facility from its economic impact on the surrounding region.
Exactly. But there is also a sheer necessity driving this discipline. We often talk about the financing gap for the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs.
And from a capital allocator's perspective, that gap is just staggering. We're looking at a $6.4 trillion annual financing gap by 2030.
$6.4 trillion every single year. And public funding and development aid simply cannot fill that hole. It is mathematically impossible.
So private finance is the only mechanism with the scale required.
Right. Private capital is essential to close this gap via blended finance structures and broad support for the low-carbon transition. Private capital is not just nice to have here, it is the engine.
And for the private investor, that gap represents a massive, unfunded market demand. So we have the capital and we have the motive. But I want to explore what is actually forcing this new discipline. It is not just goodwill.
No, definitely not. There are two main drivers forcing this rigor: regulation and technology. Let's look at the regulatory pressure first, because that is the immediate force.
We have moved very rapidly from voluntary guidelines to mandatory sustainability disclosures.
And the scale of those mandates is unprecedented. These disclosure requirements now cover $79.5 trillion in banking assets.
Across 72 countries, that creates an unavoidable compliance baseline.
Exactly. If you want to play in these markets, you must have the data infrastructure to report. It is a cost of entry now.
But while regulation is the push, technology really feels like the pull. We often hear technology described as the great equalizer in this space.
It is revolutionizing the space because it fundamentally changes how we verify claims. In the past, impact reporting relied heavily on the portfolio company filling out a survey at the end of the year.
Which is obviously prone to bias.
Highly prone to bias. But now we have a pivot toward direct verification using artificial intelligence and satellite data. This allows for real-time impact monitoring.
So you are no longer relying on self-reporting.
Right. You do not have to wait for an annual PDF report to know if a product is delivering on its environmental claims. You can actually see it. Data-driven strategies are currently mapping more than $1 trillion in impact assets under management.
Across 5,000 funds.
Yes. AI tools are analyzing unstructured data from geospatial feeds to local reports to build an objective, comprehensive picture of asset performance.
And that completely alters the risk profile, especially regarding climate risk. Because if you are holding real assets, physical risk is direct financial risk.
It is critical. AI analyzes geospatial data to monitor physical climate risk in real time. If you own a toll road in a region susceptible to extreme weather, you have to know your exposure to climate adaptation needs immediately.
Because the adaptation financing gap in that sector is enormous. It is estimated between $310 billion and $365 billion US dollars.
Right. Understanding that risk is a matter of financial survival. If you cannot measure your asset's resilience using this technology, you are flying blind.
And this visibility leads directly to more demanding investors. They want proof of what the industry calls additional positive outcomes.
Institutional investors want to know that their capital achieved something that would not have happened otherwise. Look at the 2X Challenge.
The Global Gender Lens Investing Initiative.
Exactly. The 2X Challenge has seen $33.6 billion in gender lens investments, and they have set a new target of $20 billion for the period from 2024 to 2027.
Which proves that when you have rigorous, verifiable measurement, you attract scalable capital.
Institutional investors are willing to commit billions, but only if the impact is as verifiable as the financial yield.
This brings us to the operational side. If the old, opaque, proprietary measurement systems are fading, what is replacing them? The industry seems to have coalesced around standard frameworks.
Standardization is the only path to comparability, and a few core frameworks have really taken over. The foundational one is the theory of change.
Right, which requires funds to map out their logic model explicitly.
Yes, from inputs to activities to outputs and ultimately to impacts. It sounds basic, but it forces a fund to articulate the exact causal link between a dollar invested and a social result.
It eliminates the spray and pray approach to impact investing.
Exactly. And then you layer on Iris Plus. That is the global impact investing network system for standardized performance metrics.
So that when two different funds talk about job creation, they are actually counting it the same way.
Right. Iris Plus clarifies if we are talking about temporary construction labor or permanent operational roles, and SDD alignment has completely evolved as well.
It is no longer enough to just put a colorful SDG icon on a slide deck and claim you support it.
That is the most significant shift. We have moved from qualitative support to quantitative contribution. You cannot just state that you support affordable and clean energy, SDG 7.
You have to measure the specific megawatt hours of renewable energy generated.
Or the exact number of households gaining access to the grid. If you cannot quantify the specific contribution, the market does not accept the alignment anymore.
Now, we need to be realistic about the environment we are operating in. Emerging markets are incredibly complex.
They are. Implementing these rigid measurement frameworks in London or New York is one thing. Doing it in lower income regions is another challenge entirely.
You are dealing with severe data gaps.
Huge data gaps, especially where digital infrastructure is lacking. Plus, currency fluctuations and persistent political instability.
And comparability issues, too. A metric that works perfectly for a project in Southeast Asia might not apply at all to a project in Sub-Saharan Africa.
Right, the local socioeconomic contexts are just too different. Yet, despite all these headwinds, the volume of investment is increasing rapidly.
It really is. The International Finance Corporation, the IFC, committed a record $71.7 billion in fiscal year 2025.
Which is more than double the $34 billion they committed just a few years earlier in 2022.
So the capital's flowing at scale, which means these measurement systems absolutely must work, despite the difficulties.
They have to. The market is finding ways to price these risks and verify the outcomes.
So how do you operationalize this? If you are a fund manager facing these emerging market data gaps, where do you even start?
You have to start with the baseline. This is completely non-negotiable now. You cannot measure progress if you do not have a defined starting point.
But once you have the baseline, how do you ensure the data keeps flowing?
Through legal integration. Key performance indicators, the KPIs, must be integrated directly into the investment agreements.
So you are making the impact reporting a legal obligation for the portfolio company.
Exactly. It is not a nice to have. They are legally obligated to report on impact metrics just as they report their financials.
And if they fail to report,
If a breach of impact reporting is treated as a covenant breach, you suddenly see the data quality improve exponentially.
that brings real teeth to the measurement. Let's make this concrete for the listener and look at sector-specific metrics. If I'm looking at an infrastructure fund, what exactly should they be reporting?
In infrastructure, you look for kilometers of road built, certainly. But you also need the reduction in travel time and the total volume of trade facilitated.
Because a road that does not reduce travel time is not an economic asset.
Right, it is just expensive pavement. The metrics have to capture the economic efficiency.
And what about renewables? Beyond just the capacity installed in megawatts.
You track tons of CO2 emissions avoided, and crucially for emerging markets, the reliability of supply. Is the power actually staying on?
Because intermittency is a massive issue in developing grids.
Exactly. So reliability metrics are a proxy for the quality of the engineering and the operations.
What about inclusive finance? That sector can sometimes feel a bit harder to pin down.
But it shouldn't be. You measure the exact number of loans dispersed to female entrepreneurs, you track the default rates and compare them to traditional banks.
And those default rates are often lower.
They frequently are. And you measure increases in household income. These are hard financial numbers that prove social mobility.
I want to walk through some case studies to see this measurement in action. Let's start with the Democratic Republic of Congo and the critical minerals sector.
The DRC is a vital example because it sits right at the intersection of the global energy transition and local community development.
The focus there is entirely on the critical mineral value chain.
Right. And the key metrics they are measuring are responsible sourcing, local beneficiation, which means processing the materials inside the country rather than just exporting raw or an ESG-aligned traceability.
And why is that specific set of metrics so significant for 2026?
Because the supply chains for electric vehicles and electronics demand it. Institutional investors and corporate buyers require verified community-level development outcomes.
You cannot claim to sell a clean energy vehicle if the cobalt was sourced under opaque or unethical conditions.
Exactly. Rigorous measurement here protects the value of the final product. It is a fundamental risk management tool for the entire global supply chain.
Let's move to Europe. The Onyx Alefsis shipyards in Greece.
This was a major project, a $125 million modernization deal.
And was recognized as Marine Money's Infrastructure Deal of the Year.
Yes. The metrics applied here were all about economic transformation. They measured job creation, the adoption of clean energy within the shipyard's operations, and the enhancement of maritime capacity.
It proves that you could deliver quantifiable social and environmental outcomes in heavy industrial brownfield rehabilitation.
Impact is not just for greenfield solar plants. It applies to modernizing traditional infrastructure as well.
And finally, let's look at Mongolia, Bogged Bank. This was a $15 million financing deal.
This is a classic example of gender lens and green finance working in tandem.
The metrics they used included the percentage of women-led SMEs financed, as well as the overall green loan allocation.
And job creation. By quantifying these specific gender lens indicators, the bank proved it was successfully reaching a demographic that traditional finance models often overlook.
So they effectively expanded their market share while fulfilling a development mandate.
That is the exact definition of value creation. Measurement is not a burden. It is the tool that proves the quality and resilience of the asset.
Which really synthesizes everything we have covered today. The funds that are winning in 2026 are those proving their outcomes with deep financial discipline.
Measurement is the bridge between the development mission and mainstream capital. If you cannot measure it with rigor, you simply cannot expect institutional capital to trust it.
And that brings us to a strategic question for you, our listener. As you review your own exposure to emerging markets, there's a core governance issue you need to evaluate.
Right. As institutional capital seeks refuge in quality, does your current governance framework treat impact data with the same rigor as your financial audits, or is it still leaving your portfolio exposed to the risk of unverifiable claims?
That is the question that will define capital allocation over the next decade. This has been Delphos Insights. Learn more at delphos.co.